Alright, what's going on, everybody? My name is Terrell, if you ain't know by now. Today's topic is going to be defining democratic socialism. Because a lot of people, well, rather, a lot of politicians are starting to throw this term out there. The problem is, we don't have a precise understanding of what this term actually means. Now, as I said, I'm devoting this to breaking down what the meaning of the word actually is. But before we get into that, I know I'm gonna have a lot of criticism behind using Wikipedia. A lot of people hate Wikipedia. Fact is this: Wikipedia is not a bad source of information. Wikipedia is actually a great source of quick information. Now, what is Wikipedia? I'm gonna do a later on. I'm gonna do a video on this. What is Wikipedia? But Wikipedia at face value. Let's break down this word. Wiki from the Hawaiian language meaning quick, and pedia from the Greek language meaning upbringing or education, so to say. So Wikipedia is just a quick source of information. This is a part of why the teachers in school told the kids not to use it, because it takes away from all the work of actually doing the research yourself. Everything's there for you, sources are there, references. They even have a talk segment where you could discuss things with people. That's Wikipedia. Like I said, I'll do a video in the future about this. My channel is rather new. Well, this channel is rather new, so give me some time for a few things. Y'all gotta bear with me. Alright? But now back to the topic. Democratic socialism. What is democratic socialism? Politicians will quickly say, "Oh, we don't associate with like Stalin. We don't associate with the Hugo Chavez. You know, we have democratic socialism. We want democratic socialism." So, what exactly is democratic socialism? Let's read the definition. Democratic socialism is a political philosophy supporting political democracy within a socially owned economy with a particular emphasis on economic democracy, workplace democracy, worker self-management within a sorry within a market socialist economy or some form of decentralized planned socialist economy. So, um, that doesn't really do any justice to anybody, because there's a whole bunch of words that's thrown around in here. It's a whole lot of things that can mislead people, because when we look at these words, we don't necessarily understand what they mean, so to say. Now, let's just break down this word first, and then we'll get to the nitty gritty. So now, what is democratic? You know, democratic. Democratic is denoting a democracy. So, what is a democracy? A democracy is a system of government by a whole population or all the eligible members of a state, typically through elected representatives. So now, when we hear the word democratic socialism, it's like, okay, we know that we elect people in this country, so what's the purpose of putting democratic in front of it? Really, democratic socialism is just socialism. It's socialism. It may not be how you say, a monarchy. It may not be what's the phrase I'm looking for? It may not be totalitarian. There we go. But in America, because our system, by default, it will have to be democratic socialism. So let's just erase this from the definition, because that's just there to deter you from getting a clear understanding, because there's no difference between democratic socialism and just saying that you're a socialist. In America, that is. So now, what is socialism? Now, before we look at the actual definition, I want to break down this word the same way I broke down Wikipedia. So now socialism. Now ism is a suffix. You can look into that on your own. Ism is a suffix that denotes like pertaining to, and social is speaking of people being together, so to say. Etymology of social is an adjective devoted to or relating to home life, living with others, um, of companionship, of allies, united living with others. So socialism pertaining to living with others. Now let's actually grab the definition. Socialism. What is socialism? Socialism is a political, social, and economic philosophy encompassing a range of economic and social systems characterized by social ownership of the means of production and workers' self-management of enterprises. So let's stop right there. Now, this isn't really serving as much justice as we need when it comes down to the definition, because it's very misleading. These words can always be misled. People can always be misled by these words by people who understand these words. Because I have a lot of conversations with people about what socialism is, and they completely think that I'm full of crap, you know. So let's get down to the nitty gritty of these things. Now, again, let's just get down to the nitty gritty. Socialism is a political, social, and economic philosophy. So it's an economic philosophy that's characterized by social ownership. You know, everybody owning it. So now, people see this and be like, yeah, this means we all own it. This is social ownership. We own the means of production. You know, we own the things that we produce. A lot of people would take this and interpret it to me as if, you know, I work at Walmart or something like that. You feel me? I work at Target or something. You know, and I need some eggs, I need some milk, you know. I got the little one in the crib. I got my daughter, I got my son, I got the family. We need something to eat tonight, you know, and since we under socialism and we got this social ownership thing going on, maybe I'll take this milk, I'll take these eggs, you know, let the boss know I'm taking it. He'll be alright, you know, the owners ain't gonna, cause we all own it, right? We all own the means of production. It's not necessarily what social ownership is. So what is social ownership? Now, this is the definition. The concept of social ownership refers to various forms of ownership for the means of production in a socialist economic systems. These systems may encompass state ownership, employee ownership, cooperative ownership, citizen ownership of equity. That's a big one. I'm gonna go into that. I'm gonna do a video on that also. So citizens ownership of equity, common ownership, or collective ownership. So let's stop there, because this is gonna go into, you know, different various forms that then transpired itself throughout history. We want to know exactly what these people in our country is talking about, because we live in America. What would social ownership be like in our country? Because they're telling us they want democratic socialism. So what does this look like in our country? First, we have to figure out what type of system our country operates under. Now, many would say, you know, oh, we're a democracy. You know, that's the reason why they want democratic socialism. We're a democracy, we want democratic socialism. Right? Now, what does that actually mean? Now, first and foremost, saying that America is categorized as a democracy isn't fully the truth. It's something that makes us a democracy. Jesus. It's something that makes us. Jeez, oh, I'm getting all these notifications at one time. Pardon me, y'all. But now, there's something that makes us a democracy, which is the fact that we are the United States is genuinely characterized as a constitutional federal republic. Now, us being a republic is what brings in the democracy or the democratic tendencies we have in this country. So now, just to give you a little bit of proof, I pulled up something from directly from the U.S. Embassy website. As you can see, usembassy.gov. This ain't no whatever. So let's read what they say. While often categorized as a democracy, the United States is more accurately defined as a constitutional federal republic. So what does this mean? As I said, the republic is what makes us democratic. Let's continue. What does this mean? Constitutional refers to the fact that government in the United States is based on a constitution, which is the supreme law of the United States. The Constitution not only provides the framework for how the federal and state governments are structured, but also places significant limits on their powers. Federal means that there is both a national government and governments of the 50 states. A republic is a form of government in which people hold power, and here is the big part, but elect representatives to exercise that power. So that is the type of system we live under. We have a federal government, we have a state government. This is what makes us a federal nation, a constitutional federal republic. The republic is what makes us have democratic tendencies, or a democracy, us being a republic. We have power, but we elect representatives to exercise that power. And those people would be the government. As we read in the definition of democracy, a system of government by a whole population or all the eligible members of a state, typically through elected representatives. So we elect representatives to exercise our power as a republic. So now, let's go back to social ownership. So in our social ownership, what brings us together would be the government. So in all actuality, social ownership in America would have to be state ownership, because we elect people in our states to represent us. We elect people in our states to exert our power, as it's written, to exercise our power. So now, what exactly is state ownership? All right. So now, state ownership. State ownership, also called government ownership and public ownership. Let's stop real quick. Now, this is where sometimes a lot of things get confusing. For some people, not all, but for some people, because we see the phrase public. Aren't we the public? So that means we also own things, right? But no. As it says, state ownership, also called government ownership and public ownership, not or public ownership. So it's all the same thing. Remember, we as a republic, we hold power, but elect representatives to exercise that power. So public ownership is the same thing as saying government ownership or state ownership, because in order for the public to actually own something as a unitarian fashion, Basically, what that means is that, we need elected people to represent us as a whole. We got to elect people. So that's what it means when they say public ownership. So now let's just read this. Pardon me. State ownership, also called government ownership and public ownership, is the ownership of an industry, asset, or enterprise by the state or public body representing a community as opposed to an individual or private party. All right, let's stop right there. So, as I said, state ownership, government ownership, public ownership, they're all the same thing. It's the ownership of industry, which would be like raw goods, assets, which is things that's owned by businesses or corporations. Oh, sorry, enterprise, which would be corporations. And all these things are owned by the state or quote unquote a public body, which is the same thing as the state because we elect those people, as it says, representing a community as opposed to an individual or private party. So now the private individual or the private party would be basically, as it says, the individual, the regular citizen. State ownership, as I said, is democratic socialism. Or, as a matter of fact, state ownership is social ownership. Ownership is what democratic socialism or socialism advocates for. Socialism advocates for state ownership. Now, state ownership, what are things that's owned by the state? For example, you have law enforcement, firefighters. You have certain services like infrastructure and things of that nature that are owned by the state and funded by the state, which means taxpayer dollars. Our taxpayer dollars pay for certain services. This is what we would call the public sector. Let me pull that up. Public sector. See the word public? The public sector, also called the state sector, state ownership, government ownership. So it's all the same thing. The public sector, also called the state sector, or you could say government sector, is the part of the economy composed of both public services and enterprises. Like I said, you got your military as it goes on to read, law enforcement, infrastructure, public transportation, public education, along with healthcare. Some of these things are necessary to be funded by the public sector. Now, in our country, we have both what's called public and private sectors. Now, a socialist, or as they like to call it in our country, a democratic socialist, basically their ideology is about having a strong public sector. We need more things to be ran and owned by the state, by the government. This is what they advocate for. This is why, for example, you have a Bernie Sanders or Joe Biden that wants to raise your taxes. This is how we as a public take care of each other. We do that through the government because we have what's called a republic, which is a form of government in which the people hold power but elect representatives to exercise that power. So when we vote, which is why voting is important, when we vote, we elect representatives to exercise our power. So when we vote for Joe Biden or Bernie Sanders or AOC, they're pushing for more funding to the public sector so that they could take care of more people by way of services and public enterprises. Public services, as we said, public goods and governmental services. Now, there's nothing wrong with the public sector. I'm not saying there's anything wrong with that. But you have people who want a big public sector in comparison to a small public sector or a big private sector. Now, as we read back in what's the state ownership, it's a public body representing a community as opposed to a individual or private party. So this is in confliction with a private party or private sector, private ownership. Most of the time, what you hear from socialists is that they're against private ownership. So now, what exactly is the private ownership or the private sector? The private sector is a part of the economy sometimes referred to as the citizen sector, you and me, which is owned by private groups or private individuals, usually as a means of enterprise for profit rather than being owned by the state. So now what exactly does this mean? This is like saying, for example, I wake up one day, I decide I want to start a business, open up a supermarket. Now, I am a private individual that opened up a business. Private individual or private group, if I had somebody investing with me. And we do this for profit, to make money. Nobody starts a business and doesn't want to make money, rather than being owned by the state. Now, socialists want you to believe that this is bad. And they have good reason to believe so. Everybody, in my opinion, has a foundational reason of what they believe in. But they don't want people to privately own things. If you hear these people, they want everything to be owned by the state. They want state ownership of the means of production. They want a socialist society. If you have a complete socialist society, that brings down the private sector. And that's basically what a socialist is about, because they want state ownership or social ownership, however you want to call it. And this is why I say that the meanings of words are important, because if you don't understand what a word means, you can be misled by that word. Because a socialist basically wants social ownership, and in America, a democratic socialist system is based upon state ownership, government ownership, as opposed to an individual or private party or a private individual owning things. And to sum things up, I mean, that's basically it. Public versus private sector. Public ownership, private ownership. We as the people, we elect representatives to exercise our power, and they do so via the public sector. They receive their funds through taxation and the central bank. So now I want you to think about this next time you're asked or the conversation arrives. Are you really a socialist or a democratic socialist? Do you believe in socialism? Do you believe that the government should own the means of production? Think about that. It's not a video to make something seem bad or good. It's just a video to bring some type of understanding, some type of clarity, so people genuinely understand what these terms mean. Because I had a plethora of conversations with people, and they had a strong misconception of what this, as they say, this political philosophy actually means. Because in a nutshell, socialism is a political philosophy, and this philosophy is based upon economics. And the economics that they want is state ownership, which is government ownership. So again, don't want to make this too long-winded. I ain't trying to have y'all here for too long. Got other videos to come. A lot of the stuff that I went over, I just tried to be quick with it. And for the most part, some of this stuff I'll probably go into in future videos. Might not, depending on, the severity of the issue. But before you leave, I want you to genuinely ask yourself, are you a socialist? Do you believe in socialism? Do you believe in state ownership? Government ownership of the means of production? Alright, don't forget to like, share, subscribe. Hit that bell. Alright, y'all. Peace.